held all of our economies to ransom in order that they can pursue more profit. This has led to untold misery for millions. What we say in opening government is that states should nationalize banks and stop running them for profit, run them solely for the benefit of those who use them. That is simply what we stand for. Two broad arguments. I want to look at principally why we nationalize things and why giant financial institutions fall into this category, and then secondly I want to talk about why states will be better at running these kinds of banks. In terms of a model, a few things. So firstly, we're going to do the motion. We think there are a variety of different ways in which you can nationalize things. We're not going to be incredibly specific, but in terms of the sorts of things we're happy to stand over. So we think we should take control of institutions that are systemically important, make up a huge proportion of the economy. We're happy to allow, say, for example, credit unions and smaller banks to continue operating. It's only the huge ones we're talking about. Secondly, we're happy to pay quite a large amount of compensation to those who are taking the banks off. We think that's very reasonable. Next, we would say in terms of when we nationalise it, the specific thing we want to do is not run it for profit, run it for the benefit of those using it. And finally, we're happy to continue to allow, say, people investing in stocks and bonds in the bank. We think that we seen as relatively a safe investment. No, thank you. Principally then, why do we nationalise things? So, in general, we allow markets, right, because we think people should be able to allow to essentially make free choices as to what things they want, and the market is generally quite efficient in providing those things, right? But we say there are certain kinds of things that essentially are markets that involve things that you're unable to opt out of. For example, everybody at some point in their life needs healthcare. You need treatment. That is a thing that you are unable to opt out of. So we think that should be something that is state-run, so that everybody should be allowed to have access to that. Similarly, we would say the same is true of basic needs, such as food. So that's why we have something like welfare, to allow a situation where people don't opt out of it, right? We say financial institutions create a situation and create effects that is impossible for people to opt out of, even though they didn't choose to be involved in that in the first place. What do we mean by this? So recognize the speculation and risk-taking that happened in financial markets, like the bizarre financial products that have nothing to do with the everyday life of most people, things like collateralized debt obligations, like all kinds of derivatives, those kinds of things. When the risk went too far and the whole system came tumbling down, it caused misery for untold millions of people who were never involved in those interactions in the first place, right? So that is a way in which people are literally unable to opt out of that, right? But what we say further to this is that these institutions are completely democratically unaccountable. There was no way that we could hold them accountable for the things that they did to the economy, for the misery they caused, right? So that's hugely important. We say conversely, in the context of a state, through things like elections, you were able to hold them democratically accountable, right? These guys say, no, you can still do this through regulations, though. Recognize, right, the problem with this is that the people, lobbyists tend to be stuck with people from these organizations in the first place, right? So the kinds of regulations that they want to talk about don't happen because of the power of these financial lobbies, and since most states need them, most governments need them in order to get elected, that's a thing that can't happen, right? So at the end of this point, what we say is, because people can't opt out of it, and because it's not democratically accountable, that's a situation in which we've nationalised it. Closing.
To my best of knowledge, we have not nationalized McDonald's. It is okay for opposition to concede the fact that welfare should be nationalized, however, not all banks should be at the end of the day. You're going to explain that every bank, which is systematically important, we can concede that one bank which can be nationalized in order to give everything that we want.
So every bank that is systematically important has the potential to destroy the economy in a way that will wreck the lives of millions of people, and in the sense in which it's collapsed. The people who make the decisions to do that cannot be held accountable currently. When the state runs it, they can. That's the potential. Let's talk about why states are better at running banks. The first thing we would point out here is that that banks in the status quo, systemically important ones, face huge amounts of moral hazard in how they're running the banks. What do we mean by this? Because most of these systemically important banks know they will be bailed out because they are such a huge part of the economy. That means they are more likely to take huge risks, which lead to the kind of collapses that creates that misery in the first place, right? We say when the state is running this thing, it knows that only it will take on the costs should the risks fail. So it's likely to be more it will still take good risks, but it's likely to be more risk averse, which we think is a good thing in this area. The second thing we say is the state as an overall body has more a perspective that falls in line with the whole economy, and as opposed to in a situation where individual banks will pursue policies that benefit them but don't necessarily benefit the whole economy. This is true of things. And so, for example, constantly pursuing houses that have been mortgages that have been foreclosed, those are things that are bad for the economy because it leaves people in positions where they can't buy it. They're good for individual banks, right? The state won't do this if it is national, if all these institutions are nationalizing. Also on this, no, thank you. Also on this, we just say because it's being run for the benefit of all of those who are using it, not for profit, it is less likely to do things that we just say are cruel to individuals in those circumstances, right? Banks, when profit is their only interest, and indeed because their board essentially demands them to pursue profit above all else, are likely to choose cruel options over not cruel options. That is not true of the state when it's being run for the benefit of everybody. Finally, we'd say, in terms of the influence in terms of the influence that these banks on their side have over the decision-making process. In the first place, they get rid of regulations that will be good for them. So, for example, something like Glass-Steagall was able to be repealed because of the influence of the financial institutions. We think when the state is looking at the economy as a whole, it will realize it is beneficial to split up commercial and investment banks because of the risk it poses to combine those two things together, whereas banks individually will decide to not split them up because they think